This is Chris Gimignani with Juice Analytics. Welcome to the Squaring the Pie Solutions video. Last week I showed this interesting alternative to pie charts on the Eager Eyes website. I asked people for ways to reproduce these square pie charts in Excel. The response was terrific. 18 people submitted solutions. There were at least 32 distinct solutions. In general, there were 4 different ways that people solved this problem, with cell filling, column charts, stacked column charts, and XY. I'm going to show the first 2 of those. And to generate the numbers, most people pre-calculated a grid of numbers, and I'll show you how that's done. A few people used a formula, which is how I had initially planned on doing it. Pre-calculating is easier when dealing with a fairly small grid of numbers. Here's a grid showing the order in which we would want to fill cells. In cooking show fashion, we'll just pull this out of the oven. The details on how it's made aren't important. I'm going to show a cell filling solution first. Imagine we put the number we want to graph right up here on the top. Now I'm going to jump over and grab the grid I had just created and bring it and put it in kind of on the bottom of this worksheet. We're going to use this space up above the grid to create a formula. This formula, in this case, we're saying if a particular cell is less than the number that we want to graph, show a 1, otherwise show a 0. And when I copy and paste this over, I wind up with 1s in the places where I want to graph cells and 0s where I don't want to show anything. Then we use conditional formatting to fill these cells. We say if the cell value is equal to a 1, then we're going to set both the background pattern to a medium blue and the font color to a blue, so you can't see the font in there either. Grab the full range again and set the font color of that range to white. That makes all the fonts disappear. So there are going to be 1s or 0s, and the 1s will be blue. Now we're going to set some grid lines. This is basically what we have, and now it's just a matter of bringing in the width and sort of reducing the sizes down to something we can work with. If you shrink things up real small, then even the numbers disappear and you pretty much just have a grid. And you can see as we change the number in the cell, we fill the grid appropriately. So that's how the cell filling. Now I'm going to jump back to the midway point of the previous example and show how the column charting example works. The setup for this is exactly the same, except for I'm going to sum each of these columns. That happened kind of fast, but that's a vertically summing the column. Now I'll open up a little space to put a chart in. And the chart is going to be based on this, on the sums of each column. Now there's a bunch of things we have to do to clean up this chart. We have to set the vertical axis to go between 0 and 10. It jumps every 1. And we set the grid lines. That's clear in the background. And then we're going to set the grid lines as well to show major grid lines. The grid lines always, generally in Excel, need to be cleaned up because they're always too prominent. So here I'm setting them to the lightest color gray. And finally I'm deleting a little bit more junk, including the axes. Now the last thing I need to do, you can see that as I change the number, the column basically works, but what I need to do is I need to change the options so there's no gap between these columns, and then I'm going to go in and change the pattern so there's no line around these. Now I have a solid block that's shaded, indicating the volume that I want to graph. Let's scale it down and take a look at a couple examples here. Changing the number works, everything looks good. Now I'm going to add a dynamic chart title that will actually show me the number that is being graphed. So what I need to do is I go in and set a dummy title here, and then While that title is selected, I refer to a formula cell, to a cell in the chart, and that's going to make those two values, make the chart title dynamically update to whatever the value of that cell is. Now by adjusting this, changing the font, making it large, I actually get a quite nice display of the number that's being graphed. This helps. There's some usability problems with these square pie charts in that it's hard to see exactly what number is being graphed, and especially as you graph larger numbers, like numbers above 50%, there's some potential for distortion because people don't, they may perceive the area of the shaded area as larger than it actually is. So this number here in the title helps to reduce that kind of confusion. Now I want to show you some of the best of the submissions. And they were all good. I really appreciate all the great ideas people put out. This is one by Clint Ivey that came in very soon after. This is a chart filling one, and I will place a link to this in the blog. What he's doing is he's putting a semi-transparent overlay on top of this, and then he's using pictures to display it in the actual final version. So that winds up looking really nice. And the other example I wanted to show you is a chart-based example. Here's a chart-based example produced by Dermot Balson that also has a really nice explanation. Looks quite good, and he does it in two different ways and creates identical appearance between the two of them. Thank you all for participating, and I hope you enjoyed this challenge, and we'll do it again soon.